Since joining Liverpool in 2017, Mo Salah has established himself as one of the best players in Liverpool history. But what legacy does he leave at this club?
It's shock. I'm in shock right now to even be talking about this right now. It's a bit bittersweet because it almost feels like there's unfinished business to the end of the season. But in terms of legacy, there's no doubt Mohamed Salah is a living legend, right? He'll go down as one of Liverpool's greatest ever players. And I'm really interested to see how he continues the rest of the way. But he's been an African footballing legend as well. And as someone who played in African football, as someone who was actually supposed to make his debut in African football against Mohamed Salah, this is surreal.
A huge moment happening, you can see, in terms of what he has done, not just for Liverpool, but in the Premier League, in Champions League. The list goes on and on. And for more on this announcement, we are pleased to welcome in CBS Sports English football correspondent James Benge. Hey, James, welcome in. It is so good to chat with you about this and big news. As Michael said, we're a little bit shocked here, but tell me a little bit more about this, because Mo Salah had another year on his contract. He just re-signed one more year at Liverpool. Why is this decision coming now?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, the question might really be, why did this not happen last year when Mohamed Salah was on top of the world? Probably the best individual season that a Premier League player has had. And he had the chance to move on, but I think he felt that he had unfinished business in Europe at the highest level, and he wanted to continue this story with Liverpool. For both parties, it hasn't gone quite in the direction they were hoping. Salah's own form has dropped off somewhat. He's not been maybe as bad as some have said, but his form has dropped off. It's been harder to justify paying him £400,000 a week, as Liverpool are understood to pay him. And of course, tensions really frayed as Liverpool's own form struggled. In December, he said that he felt like he'd been thrown under the bus by the club when he was placed on the substitutes bench very frequently. And although, after the Africa Cup of Nations, he sort of came back into the side and his form's not been that bad, it's quite apparent that, you couldn't really justify another season of this either for Salah or for Liverpool. So while sort of like Mike, my initial reaction was shock at the in the moment announcement, I don't think it's really that much of a surprise that Salah isn't seeing out year 2 of this contract.
So it's not a surprise that it's actually happening, but what about the manner, right? He has agreed to leave Liverpool. Liverpool has allowed him to leave at the end of the season. To me, free agent comes to mind, but how is this deal being finalized?
Yeah, Salah is leaving as a free agent. In many ways, this sort of reflects what we reported on CBSSports.com back in December when, this was at its crescendo. And it was very clear then that the obvious landing spot for Salah, and I know we'll come on to talk about potential destinations, but the obvious landing spot of Saudi Arabia, the clubs there were not really minded to pay Liverpool much of a fee, if any at all, to sign Salah. Salah would get a out of this world extraordinary personal package. But, Saudi Arabia were looking at this and saying, you've got a player that isn't performing as he used to, that you probably want to move on from. We're not going to pay you to take him off your hands. And frankly, if the Saudi Pro League clubs are not minded to pay a transfer fee for your 33-year-old on £400,000 a week, it's going to be a real struggle to find anyone elsewhere. So to an extent, just kind of cutting the cord now allows Salah to have his farewell that he has absolutely earned. It allows Liverpool to start their planning, and it probably means you don't kind of waste time trying to drum up a transfer fee that in all likelihood I think wouldn't have come.
James, you've covered Mohamed Salah and you've covered the Premier League in those 8 seasons, those 8 years he's been a part of it. When you take a step back and you look at all he's done and all he's meant to Liverpool, what's his ultimate legacy with the club going to be when it's all said and done?
With the club, one of the greatest players ever, and we have to say, being one of the greatest Liverpool players ever means you are one of the greatest players in the history of English football, in the history of European football. And, we've seen the prizes there. The most PFA Player of the Year awards, that is a very hard one title. The most Golden Boots, level with Thierry Henry. These individual accolades kind of speak volumes. To me, I would also say, and I said this at the top, I sincerely believe that last season was the greatest individual season in the Premier League era we've ever seen from a single player. You're talking 29 goals, 18 assists in 38 games. That's more goal involvements last season than Manchester United. Sorry, Mike, for bringing that up, but I had to.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, there's so, we could sit here for hours just talking about his records, but the joy, the exuberance, and the delight that he brought to Anfield, and the quality of so many of those goals. He's one of the greatest players the Premier League has ever seen. I used to get excited for Liverpool coming to London, especially in those first few years of Salah, because it felt like he'd kind of come out of nowhere. He hadn't. He's one of the great recruitment triumphs of the last decade. Liverpool were the team that spotted all those expected goals and realised they translate to the Premier League quite spectacularly. But he was just a player you got really excited to see. I think that the game I saw last season for him at West Ham is one of my favourite memories of recent years in football. He was that good.
So well said, James. For me personally, I think Mohamed Salah is Liverpool's greatest ever player. I know it's debatable. I know Stevie G's up there, but for me, what I've seen from him, and you and I, we've sidebar about his role, the significance of the resurgence, getting the hands on that trophy. I'd even put him top 3 in Premier League history all time. But for me, I want to talk about the Premier League as a whole, because just in the last, let's just say 2 seasons alone, right? We've seen the Premier League lose some of its keyest contributors, James, in the last decade. I'm talking about Kevin De Bruyne, no longer there. We're now about to start seeing Mohamed Salah, not part of the Premier League, at the end of this season. Harry Kane playing football in Germany. He still might come back to England, but for now, it's not happening. So for you, are we seeing the end of an era in English football as we know it?
I suppose we are, yeah. I hadn't thought of that, but that's a really good point, that the icons of old are moving past their peak and past their prime. You've mentioned those names there, but there's so many others you could mention. I mean, from a Liverpool perspective, Trent Alexander-Arnold's departure, I think it won't be long before we see Virgil van Dijk not necessarily leave, but just sort of ease out of that elite status. I mean, having said that, there are so many players coming up, and many of them already established, who might end up succeeding Salah as the best player in the league and the best player in the world. Erling Haaland is certainly already in that conversation. Someone like Declan Rice as well. Salah has been so good that I'm always sort of hesitant to name some other players, because I feel like comparing them to Mo Salah, it's just not the right thing to do. But I don't think we're seeing the end of the Premier League as a great force. I don't even really think we're going to be seeing the end of Liverpool as a great force. But, we are losing one of those marquee, get your TV on a Sunday afternoon to watch Mo Salah playing players. And, you've got to appreciate them while they're there, because they're not here for long. It feels like less than 9 years since Mo Salah's arrived, and I wish we had another 9 years of him, that's for sure.
Yeah, time sure has flown by, and considering all the accolades that he has racked up. Now, the timing of this announcement comes towards the end of March, and there's still several weeks of season left to play. The club saying that this announcement came as a chance for him and the fans to have a farewell for him. What do you expect the rest of the season to look like for Liverpool now that this news is out?
Could be quite strange, couldn't it? We thought when Jurgen Klopp said 2 years ago, around this time, that, or maybe a little earlier, that he'd be leaving, we thought this would be a great rallying moment. And for a time it was, but it becomes quite hard to manage the emotion of it all. I think that's easier with a player than a coach. It's really hard, because what do Liverpool have left this season? I think they could knock out PSG, but kind of getting through PSG, probably Bayern Munich, or if not them, Real Madrid, and then whoever's lying in wait in the final, that would be very, very hard. The FA Cup is not a guarantee, coming up against Man City in the next round, and I don't think, for a player of Salah's quality, there would be much to celebrate in just getting his soon-to-be ex-teammates into the Champions League next season. So, it's a shame to be leaving in this context. Sportsmen are kind of the worst people, I think, at cultivating their own exits. I personally think it would have been, if I were, as a sort of person that tries to meld this stuff into narratives, I would have called it a day last season at Liverpool. But, there's a reason Mo Salah's a professional athlete and I'm not. So it's hard to know how this story ends. It's not the satisfying conclusion that he might have had walking out as the best player in England. And to my mind, he should have won the Ballon d'Or for last season. That level of player. that's kind of how it should have ended. But an FA Cup or maybe a Champions League, that'd be a pretty good ending.
Yeah, I think any player in world football would definitely love to go out on that note. James, last one for me. You alluded to it about maybe Saudi Arabia, but if you were a betting man, what are potential destinations for Mohamed Salah this time next season?
Well, look, we've reported for years on Saudi Arabia's interest. That remains. I have not heard anything since my last bit of reporting on this in December that would suggest that the package of around $200 million a year would not be available to Mo Salah. But of course, for reasons we don't need to go too deeply into, there are quite a lot of complicating factors around any move to that region at the moment, and I'm not going to speculate on that. I suppose the other team to keep an eye out on, given that they are owned by an Egyptian British businessman, would be San Diego FC in MLS. You guys will know more about how they might fit him into the MLS cap machinations, or if anyone has his discovery rights or all these other things that I do not understand. But I mean, you could certainly see Mo Salah landing in MLS. It's worth saying it. A year ago as well, that the word was that even though there was this interest from Saudi Arabia, from the USA, Salah still thought he could cut it in the top 5 European leagues. And while he's not superstar performance anymore, he's 10 goals and 9 assists, I think it is, in the Premier League or in all competitions this season. Like, maybe you could have a look at a team like PSG, like Barcelona, and see if you could add some veteran nous there. I think it's too hard and too early to know for sure. I'm certain there would be a lot of money on offer in Saudi Arabia, but given the current political climate, I don't know if I would be making any bets on this one.
A lot of fans' ears just perked up when you said some of those club names there, James. Thank you so much for giving us all that insight. It has been a busy day, big news, and the end of an era for Mo Salah at Liverpool, as he is set to leave the club at the end of this season. The club, Liverpool, putting out on Twitter this tweet saying Mohamed Salah is to bring the curtain down on his illustrious career with Liverpool Football Club at the end of the 2025-2026 season. The time to fully celebrate his legacy and achievements will follow later in the year when he bids farewell to Anfield. The final match for Liverpool at Anfield, May 24th against Brentford.